scary stories. Okay, so this happened about 3 years ago or so. I was around 17 years old. I am not going to dramatize anything, but let me go ahead and say that I think, personally, that this is a pretty bizarre story. There are some details about my actual relationship I'm going to leave out. I kinda want to answer the story question, but I don't think I'm ever gonna get one. I've been wanting to get some outside opinions on it aside from friends and family too, though. So here it goes. My ex Jane and I lived about an hour away from each other. We met at a park out of state and ended up living kinda close. We hit it off and dated a month after we met. Our entire relationship lasted a year, and she was my first girlfriend. From the very beginning of the relationship, she would discuss her best friend named Patrick. He was in his late 20s. She, as a reminder, was 17 and worked in a bookstore. He lived in her hometown, and she had known him since she was 13. From very early on, I thought the stories she would tell about him were outlandish. She would talk about watching him get into bar fights with a guy that went by Hammer, how once they pretended to rob a gas station but left money behind on the counter and had to jump over a roof to escape security, in which Patrick broke his ankle. Another time Patrick got a brand new Mustang that they wanted to crash into a lake, so they jumped out of it at the last second. She told me that one toward the end of our relationship. At one point I was completely skeptical of everything that she had said. You get the idea. The stories that she told seemed clearly exaggerated and downright fake. Part of me thought she was just trying to impress me for whatever reason. Here are some other important facts that I don't exactly know where to put, so I'll lay them out here. Jane was an artist. She drew all the time in her journal. She rarely drew people as they actually were. She drew people as monsters or animals. For example, she always drew me as a giraffe. She was good at it. Patrick's last name, according to her, was pronounced and spelled a certain way, Willington. Patrick Willington. Patrick's dad owned a successful company out of state that Patrick would inherit. Jane had a much older brother, who was in his late 20s as well, that had joined the military and moved to Korea. She only saw him every few years or so. Okay, now continuing. Jane would tell me that Patrick was very protective of her. She would tell him about me, and he would always be unsure of what he thought. She said that he wanted to beat me up sometimes, and that he'd hurt me if I hurt her. If she told him about something silly I did, he'd think I was an idiot and call me stupid. He also thought I was gay. This is all, of course, secondhand information. Never once in the entire relationship do I think I spoke to him. I'll get to that later. I'd also like to remind everyone that this is my first relationship. I was very insecure, very confused, and there was more going on in it that complicated some things. I do not have the best rationality, as you may have already deduced from how weird some of this sounds. The thing is, I really didn't have any reason not to believe her, you know. She had no reason to lie about any of this, but I was still skeptical. Sometimes Jane would go to Patrick's house really late at night. She said that she slept on the couch, and that he would literally throw her out of her house in the morning. Sometimes she said that she had to sneak out of her house to do this. He lived within walking distance, apparently. One time, later in the relationship, Patrick invited her on an out-of-state trip back to his hometown. They were going to stay in a mountain cabin for a week. I was not happy about that. I was more upset when she said she wouldn't tell her parents, and that they'd leave on a bus in the morning now. At this point in the relationship, I was very unsure of what exactly was going on with this Patrick person. But Jane said that if she told her parents about the trip, that she would not be able to go, and that Patrick would hate me, and she'd be pissed off. It was very important to her because Patrick apparently would be forced to move away soon to work at his dad's company, and she said she'd never see him again, so she needed to go. Well, then the day came for her to leave. Also, I did discuss this with a friend and family at the time. Patrick never showed up to get her or whatever. She was very upset, even though he'd be back in town one more time. Oh, another tidbit. Jane's parents never once mentioned Patrick ever. She never brought him up around them either. The only time she mentioned Patrick to anyone was to my dad once, after we broke up. She told my dad one of the outlandish stories I mentioned. Why she met my dad after we broke up is for a different, unrelated reason that I will not add to this story. My dad was flabbergasted, basically. I had told him about all this, but hearing it in person was crazy. Patrick was to have a birthday party once before the mountain cabinet trip thing happened. I was invited. It was going to be at his house starting at midnight. I said I couldn't go to that, but that I'd get him a present. I got him some toolkit thing. She said he'd like it, and I gave it to her to give to him. She said she brought it, and that he did in fact like it. She said the party lasted until 6 a.m. Patrick sent me a text from her phone once, when she was with him. It was standard behavior for him. He said I was a pansy or something, and that he'd beat me up. That was early on. Now here is where I think things get very interesting. Jane lived nearby an elementary school. She walked with me there and said his house was close to it. So she leads me to the back of the school, where there is woodland. She brings me to the edge of the woods and has me look in and see this very old wooden tin house sort of structure. It has broken windows, it's filthy, it's falling apart. The path to it is covered by bushes and trees. She said that was his house. Oh yeah, at this point he had moved to work at the company out of state. I asked her if she was joking. She said no, and that he wasn't very tidy even when he lived there. I thought briefly that maybe the house was just weird looking on the outside, but actually good inside. But there's no way it was. It was abandoned. Anyway, the same day she asked if I wanted to go inside. It was hot, getting dark. No one knew where we were exactly, and I did not want to get cut up by bushes or go into a sketchy house. So I said maybe another time. She insisted, saying that Patrick wanted us to check on things, but eventually gave up. This was very close to the end of our relationship. I asked her a few more questions, like, you went through those bushes and stuff every time you went to see him, and she said yes, but that they had overgrown since he left. I also asked how he drove out of his house, how anyone visited him otherwise, how he got his mail. She eventually realized that maybe I didn't exactly believe her and got mad. I said I was sorry, and that it was just different to me. She insisted it was true. I let it go. Well, we ended up breaking up shortly after, but I had a hard time coping with the breakup and ended up speaking with her again later. She was on a bus with her class to go to some trip. Well, I lost connection with her and called back. A young man answered. I asked who it was. He said Patrick Willington, not Willington. So I opened up with a question about his last name and also why he had her phone. He said that he was on his office phone. I kept asking him questions about himself that only the real Patrick would know. I heard noises in the background. He would pause for a minute before answering. I think she just handed the phone to a classmate and told him what to say. Frankly, that's the only real answer to that. Well, he hung up and I called her back. Jane answered and said that Patrick told her I somehow got connected to his phone since he was in her recent contacts or something. Clearly bullshit. But I played along, asking one more time about the last name, to which she had no idea what I was talking about, saying it was always Willingson, and left it at that. Oh, he wanted to beat me up badly for breaking her heart. Well, I kept speaking to her for about a week or two, and we both finally got closure about the relationship. But as I was recounting the experience with a friend, I realized something. Probably just a creepy coincidence, but I had said Jane was an artist, and that she always drew people as other things. Well, I saw many drawings of Patrick. She said he always wore his dark coat and ripped pants or something. She, as usual, did not draw him as human. She drew him as a skeleton. Really creeped out, for whatever reason, when I remembered that. I may be forgetting some other weird things that happened, but that's the main stuff. Now, to tie it all together, here are some stuff I have done about it since. I tried using Google Earth to look at where his house was, since I remembered exactly where she showed me. The trees are too thick to see in, and there is a construction nearby, so it may not even be there anymore. I have not gone back in person since it is so far away and also close to her house. I have Googled and researched in countless ways Patrick's name, both names, and anything I could remember. No useful results. She used to mention him on social media sometimes. A friend of mine, who had trouble grasping all this, found her profile and saw him mentioned recently too. I have a few theories. 1. Patrick was just some sort of imaginary friend or character she made up to fill the place of her older brother who moved away and she didn't see often. Her brother and Patrick were the same age after all, and kinda had similar personalities. I met her brother once. 2. It was all bullshit she made up for whatever reason to impress me sometimes, and to coerce me sometimes. 3. It was part of a much greater disorder or problem, which is possible Jane had other issues that I will not disclose, so it isn't impossible. 4. Patrick did exist in some way, shape, or form, but she highly exaggerated him and rarely saw him, so she told me whatever she wanted about him. Kinda fits with the brother theory. It may not be as creepy to all of you since you are on the outside of my social circle, but like I said, that's why I am posting. But to me, personally, I am bothered by this. Jane had a tendency to be very violent and say threatening things. Why did she make it all up? Why did she show me that house and say it was his? What was in that house? Regardless if anyone lived there, did she ever actually go in, like she said she did? Did she sleep there sometimes or visit late at night like she said? If so, what in the world was she doing? Did someone really somehow live there? I really highly doubt it. Why did she draw him as a skeleton? Like I said, probably creepy coincidence. Why did he have such strong feelings about me? Why did she change his last name? Why did she do that weird thing with the phone and classmate? How many of her other loved ones know about this? What would have happened if I went in that house with her? Some of this is probably heightened by my anxiety, but I do think that it's a weird story. This happened when I first started university. My first day moving into student hall, I was greeted by a very friendly guy called Dominic. He was very camp and told me he was gay early in the conversation, but I didn't have a problem with that. He offered to help me unpack in my room, then go for a drink with me. Although I thought this was a little over-familiar, I was delighted that I had made a new friend so quickly and accepted his offer. He put a tremendous amount of effort in helping me put everything in the appropriate place in my room. We then went for a drink at the student bar. I made a point to tell him I was straight, as I suspected he might have a bit of a crush on me, hence why he was being so nice. However, he didn't show any signs of dismay and continued chatting to me. I liked him a lot. He was very intelligent and interesting to talk to. I was very pleased that I had a new friend already. I was worried that I'd be lonely in the uni dorms. He didn't live in the same building as me. He just lived across. I was studying creative writing, and he was studying business, but we started to hang out a lot. Although I liked Dominic, I did start to find him a little overbearing. He would send me texts and messages on Facebook all the time, and he would get upset if I did not reply, even if it went only for about 5 minutes. He would always want to know what I was doing, and if I disappeared off Facebook for a while, he would want to know where I'd been all day. One time, I even sent him a text mentioning I was on a train, and he texted me back, "Why are you on a train? Why am I not invited to wherever you are going?" I made quite a few friends, and he would always show visible signs of displeasure whenever they were around, and whenever I talked to him about them, he would tell me he disliked them, and that I shouldn't trust them. He was very possessive, and I personally can't stand clingy friends. So I tried to distance myself from him a bit, but the more I pulled away, the tighter he held. I still hung out with him, and still cared about him, but I was starting to worry about where this friendship was going. I was pretty sure that this guy had a crush on me, and soon my suspicions were confirmed. I met this girl at a party that I went to called Anna and asked her on a date. She accepted. I was really thrilled and told Dominic about it. The second I told him, his face fell. "Why are you going on a date with her?" he asked, sounding very worried. Because I want to," I said. "But I'm going to be jealous," he said. "Please don't go. It'll really hurt me. You wouldn't want to hurt me. I'm your best friend." I had never actually told him he was my best friend before, and I found the way he was acting now both annoying and a little creepy. "I'm sorry, but I told you that I was straight before, Dominic," I said. "We can still be friends, but I'm not going to stop dating just for you." He remained sulky and miserable the rest of the night. I told myself that he'd have to accept it or get over it, but when I was on the date with Anna, I kept getting phone calls from unknown numbers. I answered first, but I couldn't hear anything on the other end. It was just as though someone was listening. I started to ignore the calls, but you would not believe how frequently they were coming in. They were coming in non-stop, and I couldn't even tell the time because they seriously would not stop. I had to put my phone on airplane mode. After about an hour of my phone in airplane mode, I switched airplane mode off. But the very second I did, the calls came in again. Although I was unnerved, I enjoyed my date with Anna, and we agreed to meet up again. When I got home from the date, Dominic was waiting right outside my dorm, his phone in his hand. Anna had no mutual connections with Dominic, so I asked him how he could possibly know about this. He just told me he had done his research. I was angered and told him it was none of his business and that I'd find out myself. He started crying, saying how he was just worried about me, and stormed off. I think he was hoping that I'd follow him, but I didn't. And when I went to my room, angry that he would try to interfere with my life like this, I've had unrequited crushes on friends before, but if they don't feel the same, I never try to force it, but Dominic only got worse. When I got back to my student room, Dominic had sent me screenshots on Facebook of a conversation he allegedly had with Anna. The messages showed her boasting to him about how she was using me and how she was planning to break my heart. Obviously, this didn't ring at all true. As one, how would she even know who Dominic was, and why would she message him? And two, why would she tell a friend of mine so openly what her plans for me were, when he would obviously show me? I demanded that he showed me the conversation from Anna on his computer screen with me there, but he told me that he had deleted the conversation because they were too upsetting for him to read. I knew right then and there that Dominic was deliberately trying to ruin my relationship with Anna through incredibly deceitful and despicable means, and I told him that I wasn't interested in him, that I would never be, and that he'd better stop right now. He told me that I was being a terrible friend, that all he was trying to do was look out for me, and that he could not believe that I was believing a stranger over him. I was seriously pissed off with the way he was selfishly trying to manipulate me now, and blocked him on social media. He started sending me constant texts and calling me nonstop every day, telling me things like he was so depressed over me, and that he had started taking heroin, and that he was contemplating suicide, basically trying to make me worry. He would also constantly send me texts saying he knew Anna was cheating on me, and that I had to come to my senses. He was creeping me out so much that I went to stay with my parents for a bit, as I wasn't comfortable living in the same area as him. I had to block his number because the phone calls were so constant. People from my uni dorm were sending me angry messages because Dominic had told them a really twisted version of what was going on, making them think that Anna was a dirty, STD-ridden whore who I had betrayed him for. It then turned out that he had been lying to everyone, telling them that me and him were in a romantic sexual relationship, and that I had cheated on him with Anna, then left him for her. I furiously set everyone straight, told them that I had never been in a relationship with Dominic and that everything he had told them about Anna was bullshit. Most people believed me, although it took a while to convince everyone that Dominic was the liar. He was very manipulative, and although a lot of his lies were ludicrous, he was very good at making himself sound legit. I decided to go back to my uni dorm after a while, as it was inconvenient for me to stay at my parents' house. while at uni. Their house was far away from it. I arrived back there quite late, as I really did not want to run into Dominic. I was so angry about him. I had a new girlfriend and studies to think about. Yet, because of his obsession and harassment, he was now all I could think about. In a very twisted way, I think this is what he really wanted. Positively or negatively, he wanted me thinking about him. When I got back, I just laid down on my bed, thinking about what to do, when suddenly, smash! A brick came flying through my window. I jumped a mile and rolled over the side of my bed, hiding, thinking it was burglars coming in or something. But nothing more happened. But once I got over the shock, I cautiously stepped over the broken glass and tried to look out the window. When I got a phone call off of a number I did not recognize, I answered it, and it was Dominic, and you will not believe what he said. "I just saw Anna throw a brick through your window and run," he shouted. "I told you she was bad news. You should have listened to me. I told you." You would not believe the rage I felt. I was so angry I could not even speak for a moment. But then I just exploded. I screamed at him that I knew it was him, and I was calling the police right now. He tried to protest, but I hung up on him and immediately called them. When they arrived, Dominic was not in his room. But when it was opened up, a large stash of illegal drugs was found there. The manager of my student halls assured me that he'd be getting kicked out for this, and the police said they would be getting in touch with him. After this, I never saw Dominic again. I changed my phone number and never unblocked him on social media. A couple times I was tempted to out of sheer curiosity, but decided it wasn't worth it. I think he dropped out of the uni, but I don't know exactly what happened to him. My relationship with Anna didn't last. She was never quite clear on why she ended it, but I actually suspect that Dominic's freakish behavior scared her off. Even though it wasn't my fault, oh well, life goes on. Dominic, I hope whatever issues you're going through, you sort them out. And I hope that you find a guy who actually does want to be with you. But please, let's not meet again. Last year I went out of state for my first year of college to school in India. The first week I formed many friendships, and one of those was with a boy who would end up becoming my stalker. He was fairly normal at the start, and I genuinely enjoyed his company as well as his roommates, and we became quite close. Spending a lot of time together, soon I had developed friendships with other people, and he became a part of my friend group. About a month into knowing him, I started to get a feeling that he liked me more than a friend. I still acted normal around him because I did not want to draw attention to it because the feeling wasn't mutual, and I did not want to ruin our friendship. One night, about 3 months into school, everything changed. This night, all of my friends came to my dorm room to drink before they went to a party. I had told my friends that they could drink in my room, but I did not want to go out because I was very upset by a hurricane that was hitting my town in Florida. All of my friends were supportive of this, except my soon-to-be stalker. Throughout the time he was in my room, he was making jokes about how dramatic I was being, and even when everyone else told him to stop, he wouldn't let up. Finally, everyone is ready to leave to go to the party. My stalker is the last to exit my room before going. He tells me that he cares about me and that if I change my mind and decide to go out, or if I need anything, that I should text him, which I found strange given his previous behavior, but I figured he had come to his senses and was attempting to be a good friend. A couple of hours after my friends leave, I get a text from another friend telling me to come help our one friend out who is too drunk and is vomiting. So I change and walk to her building. Upon arriving, I find out she is fine now and that they put her into her bed. I go outside of their building and cry about what's happening at my home on the steps by myself. I get a text from my stalker asking if I had changed my mind. In that moment, I was sad, and I figured if I went out with them and drank, maybe I would feel better. I tell him where I am and ask if the group wants to meet up. He says that they will come, but arrives alone. He suggests we hang out in my room, but I told him I want to go to see the group. He didn't seem to be too happy with this, but I call one of my other friends to see where they are, and we go to another dorm building where they are drinking.
When we get inside, we have a hard time figuring out which room they are on and what floor they are in. My stalker is visibly drunk at this point and pushes me into one of the connecting suites that is vacant. He begins to make fun of me again for being upset and is very touchy. I push him off of me and tell him to stop. We finally find one of our friends, and that friend tells us that we can meet him in his room and he has alcohol there. My stranger suggests that we go to his room instead because he's in a fight with one of the other guys and does not want to see him. I believe this and I agree. When we get to his room, we are greeted by his roommate and a bunch of his roommate's friends. My stalker grabs my backpack with his alcohol and says we should go to my room and our friend group can meet up with us, so we do. My dorm had 2 beds in it, and my stalker sits down on one of them I sleep on, so I decide to sit on the other one. He puts on a movie, and everything is normal at first. I immediately begin texting my one friend, whose room everyone was in, and tell him to bring our friends over to my room. My friends were all drunk at this point, and everyone I texted wasn't making sense. My stalker then gets into the same bed as me and lays beside me. I immediately feel uncomfortable and start rapidly texting my friends and tell them he is acting strange and that they need to come now. He sees I'm on the phone a lot, so my stalker grabs my phone from me and tells me I need to take a 10-minute break from the phone. During this point, he becomes very touchy and suggests we try this trick with my jewel where he exhales into my mouth, to which I reject. I tell him it has been 10 minutes and that he needs to give me my phone back, but he denies knowing what I am talking about. I stand up and move to the other bed because I feel uncomfortable. He gets up and moves as well. I sit at the very end of the bed opposite of him and demand my phone. He continues to play dumb. Instead, he moves closer to me and tries to playfully touch me. I've had enough at this point and tell him that he needs to give me my phone right now, and that it isn't funny anymore. He tells me he needs to go to the bathroom. While he's in the bathroom, I grab my laptop and I iMessage one of my friends to come to my room ASAP and to tell them that he is being very creepy and I need their help. Once he returns, he tells me right away that he wants to level with me and that he thinks that we should hook up. I had been making it very clear the entire time that I did not want that, and I thought that he would be able to read my body language in this situation and realize I was very clearly uncomfortable. I tell him no and that I just want to be friends and not ruin the friendship. He doesn't listen. He comes over to me and starts playfully grabbing me, and when I push him off and tell him to stop, he pushes me down onto the bed and tries to come over me. He grabs my legs and pulls me into him. I was thankfully sober and was able to kick him away from me, and I get up and run into the hallway. He doesn't leave my room and begins to insult me and tell me he never wanted to be my friend and only wanted to sleep with me, and that guys and girls can never be friends. It always has to lead to something more. He then says that he would never date me and that I'm too emotionally unstable for him, and a slew of other insults. One thing that he said that especially scares me is that he was raised to take whatever he wants, no matter what, when defending his actions. I did not know what to do and I just started yelling and crying at him to leave my room. He refuses and then makes fun of me for crying. At this point, he still has my phone and won't give it back or leave. I threaten to call the campus police on him if he does not leave, and he finally agrees. After that night, he texted me every day for a week trying to talk to me, and one of my friends told him to listen to what he had to say, so I do. He ended up confessing his love for me and told me that he still thinks we cannot just be friends, even after I said multiple times that that is all we could ever be, and ultimately told him I think that we need to stop talking. All of my other friends knew what had happened and dropped him as well. He spent months trying to talk to me and became completely obsessed. I would still hang out with his roommates, but I would only go to their room when he wasn't there, on the few occasions where he would come in, and he would later text me paragraphs about how immature I was being for ignoring him. Finally, I said we could try to be civil and just be acquaintances to be nice, but that led to him getting very mad at me for still acting uncomfortable around him and never wanting to hang out with him. At this point, every time I would see him, he would blow up my phone and text me nonstop about being fake towards him and that I needed to get over myself. I finally blocked him. After doing this, he got very angry. He would show up where I was all of the time and just stare at me. His roommates would tell me that he talked about me every night basically for the rest of the school year. He would try to ask them things about what I was doing and who I was hooking up with. He would go up to my close girlfriends all of the time and ask what he could do to fix things with me. He tried to fight a guy who expressed he was interested in taking me out on a date. A few months ago, after the incident, he made up an excuse to come to my door almost every day. He started trying to talk to me in the hallways. He would offer me his things and even bought me a Christmas present. The last few months of school, he told his roommate that his goal was to sleep with me before graduation and that he thinks I want him and I am just playing games with him. I in no way want him or make it seem as if I want him. The only way I act towards him is completely disgusted. Even over the summer, he has been texting his roommates about me. All of my friends tell me that he is stalking me and recognize that the way I am acting is in no way asking for his attention. I go back to school in the middle of August, and he will be there. He will be living in a frat next year, so I don't have to worry about him being on my floor, but he still worries me. I think something is very wrong with him emotionally or mentally, and not just because of the way he's acted towards me, just in general. I don't want anything to happen to myself or anyone else, and I think I should do something about it. Looking back on that night, I would say his behavior and the things he said were very rapey, and that the people who think if I want something I should take it no matter what are at a higher risk to sexually assault someone.